Welcome to the Fourth Branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason, said Abraham Joshua Heschel. Racism is taught in our society. It is a learned behavior towards people who have different physical characteristics, such as, for instance, skin color. One cannot delete racism. It's like cigarette. You cannot stop smoking if you don't want to. Tyson Fury said, racism is a sign of ignorance. Ignorance is the biggest threat to any democracy. It is, however, the ignorance of the ignorance which represent the greatest danger to society. It is what turns an ignorant man into a lunatic. Thus lies the danger, the peril even of a man, a community, a state, a country, yes, even a society. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Indeed, it does. We've seen it, have we not? We've witnessed it. We are all living it, are we not? All men are born ignorant. Many have chosen to stay and live in ignorance. Only a few recognize ignorance is indeed the root and stem of all evil and choose to be ignorant no more. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program. First, a warning. This program is not suitable for all audiences. I repeat, the content of this program is not for everyone. To find out if it's suitable to you, answer the following two questions. Question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Once again, question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? your time is up, obviously. If you had difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or to both questions, this program is definitely not for you. But if both of your answers are absolutely not, this program is catered exclusively to you. You should stick around. It is enlightening, educational, and informative. Join me here on the fourth branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the fourth branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we continue the conversation on war on blacks. As we pointed out, this particular topic will be debated on a weekly basis alongside with democracy in America. We're hoping that at the very least those two topics, which have some related aspect, will be debated together in order to bring some much needed information as to the state of affairs, the state of our republic. War on Blacks. It is a title that was not picked randomly, that was not picked without a lot of thought. War suggests casualties, and casualties, blacks, we have. We had physical casualties, emotional casualties, psychological casualties, but most importantly, the war on blacks continues. While we continue to debate this topic, the very purpose is to bring to the attention of the nation all the various forms that society has been waging war on blacks. We have started from general and we will be moving to specifics next week. Same with the other topic, the democracy in America. Today we will continue this conversation and we hope that you can join us every day at 2 p.m. and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m., during which we will debate various forms, various aspects of those two topics, alongside, of course, with other topics. As it might be obvious to you by now, we only use current events in relation to topics that we discuss, topics that are important, topics that impact a large group, a large sector of the population. We do not provide breaking news. It would be just purely coincidental that the information, the topic that we discuss, has some sort of relation with what's currently going on in the news. It is also important to note that the discussion or the introduction of war on blacks is merely coincidental with the presidency of Donald Trump. It is completely, absolutely independent of the presidency of Donald Trump. It is a topic that was being prepared for quite some time now. But it is fitting for the era of Donald Trump. When we come back, we will discuss first democracy in America, and we will conclude the program with war on blacks. Again, stick around. You don't want to miss this conversation. I'll be right back. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a new topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discriminations, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we, as a society, be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. There are two very important factors in any system of democracy, not just here in the United States. It is the freedom to speak, called freedom of speech, the freedom to say what you have in mind, the freedom to be able to express yourself without any fear of retaliation by the government. It is something contrarian to authoritarian regime or to dictatorship. As we already know, most people who live or were born here in the United States only read about this type of problem. They have some understanding of the concept, but do not have any way of experiencing what individuals, people who live under such regime, have to go through. As such, it is not easy to have a conversation about how much we American citizens have taken those things for granted. The freedom to speak. The second aspect of in a system of democracy is, of course, the ability to elect public officials, of course, to remove them from office as well through the ballot box. Those two aspects, which are the most important ones in any democracy, we Americans have taken them for granted. In fact, It is so important to our government, at least that's what we think, that's what we are told. It is such an important aspect of life that our government, the United States government, for over a century now, has been waging war across the globe to, quote unquote, to quote, bring democracy to those who don't have it, to those who yearn for it, to those who live under a system of dictatorship, to those who live under authoritarian regime. We value democracy so much that at the expense of our soldiers, of their lives, and also at great expenses to taxpayers, we go across the world to wage war. And we say to those individuals, to those countries, to those people, here we come bringing you a system of democracy so that you can have the freedom to do what you please, the freedom to elect your own leaders and to remove them from office whenever you so wish. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, is there? This is noble. In fact, it sounds very unselfish for a country, the United States of America, for its soldiers, for the citizen of the country to sacrifice, to make sacrifices. Of course, the soldiers' lives, they belong to a family. They have kids, they have spouses. But they leave all that behind to go to another country, and at the cost of their lives, to remove dictators, to remove authoritarians, and to spread freedom, to spread democracy to those people. If you put that in writing, it sounds beautiful. It's poetry. Now, the question that sometimes we, American citizens, ought to ask ourselves, if indeed our government is so interested in spreading this freedom, in spreading democracy across the world for other people to enjoy, why in the world the government also works so hard to prevent a group, a sector of our population here in the United States of America? Now, that is the biggest irony in the nation. We take our soldiers, we expend their lives, we spend trillions of dollars, taxpayers' money, we borrow money to go to war in order to free people of dictators, of authoritarian. But here in the United States of America, and here's the biggest irony of the whole thing, the Republican Party in general used to be hawkish. They used to be the party that always take the United States of America to war. They presented themselves not only to the American people, but to the world, that they are the protectors of the world. They protect democracy here in the United States and across the world. Absolutely nothing wrong with the willingness and you would say it's a noble principle for a people, the American people, to sacrifice their financial situation, although they don't really have much say over that because the government makes those kind of decisions. But regardless, we support the troops, our troops that go to war, and every time that we go to war, we lose some of those soldiers. This is major sacrifice that we spend our soldiers' lives, we borrow money, which becomes the responsibility of the taxpayers, us, to pay for those debt, because those are not money that we have sitting someplace. We borrow that money and we go to war to free people from dictators, to free people from authoritarians. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is great. It is a great principle. But at home, in the United States, which is supposed to have that system so well integrated into our society, the same party, the Republican Party, exclusively the Republican Party, has worked aggressively for decades to prevent people from exercising that same right, that same freedom that they expending our soldiers' lives for abroad, to bring freedom, to bring democracy to those parts of the world. That is the biggest irony in our system of democracy. And I said exclusively Republican, and I don't mean that there are some Democrats involved. I mean exclusively Republican legislators, elected officials, mayors, governors, senators, congressmen, president, exclusively Republicans have worked aggressively, systematically to prevent voting from happening. They put stumbling block after stumbling block. They come up with all kind of explanation for doing so. And on top of that, they have a propaganda machine that support that idea. Exclusively Republicans. Now, there is something Machiavellian about that kind of system, because you cannot go around the world and say you're bringing freedom to other people while inside the country, those same individuals, we do not call that hypocrisy, because I heard Democrat using this expression to explain the behavior of Republicans who do those kind of things. In my book, this is not hypocrisy. This is not politics. This is Machiavellian approach. It is beyond any politics, because what that tells me is they know, which means those Republican legislators, senators, congressmen, governors, mayors, etc., they know what they're doing is wrong. Because it is one thing for people to be ignorant And there are plenty of those. And we will talk about that as well. Now, we're debating this topic in a very general manner. As I mentioned before, we moving from general to specific. So you don't have to worry about that. Starting next week, we will start when we debate a topic, when we mention anything during the discussion of both democracy in America and a war on black. We will not just be talking in general. We will be using example to make a point. But for now, suffice to say that it is a Machiavellian approach by Republican leaders because they know what they're doing. Because if they didn't know what they were doing, you would have said that they are ignorant. But the reason we know they know what they are doing is because they sit down and craft a plan to go to war to free people from dictators, from authoritarian. And the reason that they do that is because they say they want to give the freedom, they want to give those people the freedom to elect their own leaders so that they're able to speak freely. So they know what they are doing. And yet here in the United States of America, the same country that goes out there waging wars, spending our soldiers' lives, it's the same party, the same Republican Party leaders that have worked aggressively, systematically to stifle, to silence groups of people in the United States, to prevent them from exercising that same freedom that they say they're taking elsewhere. The freedom to vote, which is one of the two most important factors in any system of democracy. It is impossible to imagine that they would be that ignorant. And as I mentioned, they are not, because they prove that they know the importance of voting and they know the importance of giving the freedom of speech to other people. So it is not ignorance on the part of the Republican legislators. It's not ignorance on the part of the Republican elected official. They do it because they have the Machiavellian idea of suppressing votes, of suppressing the ability for different groups in the country to exercise that democracy. As we delve into this topic, we will show you this is not something that begins yesterday. This is dated many decades, several decades that has been going on. Again, we're talking in general, but we will bring you specific. Don't have to worry, this will come next week. So, why? That's the big mystery. Why? Of course, if you talk to any Republican elected official or legislator, they'll give you tons of reasons that seem to make sense in their mind, but that defies the idea of a system of democracy, which is supposed to be protected by those same individuals. Instead, they work aggressively, systematically to destroy that important aspect of the country. And I keep asking the question, how do Republican legislators, elected officials, Republican leaders, how do they define democracy? What is democracy to them? Because if they work to suppress others from voting, and they have come up with really very innovative ways to do that, very creative ways. When they fail in the messaging part of saying voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud, which I will also show you that there are at least 2 decades worth of data that prove completely opposite to that message, because that is the Republican message for them to show you or to tell you why they're trying to suppress vote, because there is voter fraud. And that's a message that been spread, propagandized by the likes of Fox, and yet there is no proof, despite 2 decades worth of stats. So we know they cannot, Republican legislators, leaders cannot use that as the reason that they're trying to suppress vote. And they have come up with a number of ways to do that. Again, when we talk specific, we will bring those things to the conversation. The big question, and if anybody has the answer to that question, I would like to understand it. The big question is why? There is an erosion of our democracy by exclusively the Republican legislators and the Republican elected official. And I keep repeating it for a reason when I say exclusively, because never has any Democrat legislator involved in doing those kind of things. Why? Why are Republican leaders so aggressively working to prevent groups of people, minority in general, groups of people from exercising the rights? It is a system of democracy, is it not? This is the biggest mystery. And you want to continue following this because it is of importance. Politics is a very different beast. But whenever an individual or a group of people attack the structure, the system of that we have here, the system of democracy we have, it becomes every citizen problem. Not Democrat or Republican. Every citizen should be concerned that our democracy is being eroded. Democracy has to be fought for. You are born into it, but you can also lose it. And I can give you example of such, and we will. So don't think because it is the United States of America, and if a political party keeps eroding the system, that it's always going to be that way. It can, you can lose it, because unless it is preserved, unless it is fought for, there is a possibility of losing it. And as it stands, as I mentioned, for almost a century now, the Republican leaders have tried the best that they can to make certain that there is a group in this country that does not get to be free, that does not get to enjoy the freedom of voting. And yet, they expanding our soldiers' life, they passing debt to several generations in some are not even born yet, for the very reason that they are stifling the freedom here at home in our land. What do Republican leaders stand for? I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Join me on our next social media broadcast. See you then. War on blacks. We mentioned yesterday in our program yesterday that the title War on Blacks is extremely important, crucial, and we will continue to mention it because it is. War suggests casualties, and the blacks have suffered their share of casualty. Yesterday, I provided a synopsis of the components of those that I provided a snapshot of what really makes what makes this predicament so difficult to solve, so difficult. It is not black and white. It's not one of those problems you can just apply a formula to and this is over. And the reason for that is because racism, discrimination, prejudice not only have the different level of those, each one of those, but within the community, the white society, which make the war on blacks so difficult to resolve is because sometimes it is subtle and at times it is obvious. Now, for that reason, we provided you 4 categories of whites. Actually, rather, we mentioned that whites are divided into 4 major categories. We could have put them in 2 major categories because, in a sense, really, for sake of the discussion of this problem in the country, there are really 2 major groups. But within those 2 major groups, there are subgroups. And that's what makes even talking about war on blacks such a difficult topic, because we know there are millions of whites who do not have that type of problem, who do not discriminate, who are not racist. There are millions of such individuals in the country. And there are also millions and millions of others who actually do just that. But what makes it so difficult is because those who do, they use so many different ways of doing it. It is difficult to even accuse someone of practicing discrimination, of being prejudiced, or being a racist, except for those who just raise their hand and say, here I am, the white nationalists, the KKK, and so on. That's easy because those individuals, they come out and they raise their hand. They want you to know who they are. In fact, I remember one time I mentioned I was having a conversation with a friend, white, and I said that I do actually appreciate those individuals, referring to the KKK, the white nationalists, and friend frowned at the statement as, how could you? Last time I looked, you black, right? But if the individual who discriminate against black, the whites who discriminate against black, the individual who are racist, if they were to raise their hand just like the white nationalists and the KKK, things would have been much easier to solve. The problem would have been much easier because we could have easily taken, just like we know, if there is a change that to be made within the white nationalists, the KKK, you could easily go to that group and know that where they stand. And if you have a way or a message or somehow you could talk to those people and tell them that they're wrong and they really very wrong, and you get that message across, then you could move someone from the white nationalists and put them in the pile of people who no longer discriminate, who are no longer racist, because that would have been that easy. In fact, there is a movie, or a documentary rather, that came out a few months ago that talked about just that. A pastor, black, after what happened in Charlottesville in West Virginia, he actually managed to talk to a former white nationalist. Well, at that time, the individual was a white nationalist, so somehow he managed to get his message across. So it would have been that easy, but unfortunately, it is not, because the millions of people, of whites, who discriminate or are prejudiced or are racist, this is difficult to know them. Because if you were to say, I'll take an example. If you were to say, for instance, that somebody like Mitch McConnell is racist, all hell will break loose. If you were to say Sean Hannity is racist, all hell will break loose. Because people would say, how could you say something like that? Well, actually I can. Because people can say whatever they want with words. They can say, I'm not racist. Well, it is easy to say. But even the Bible tells us that words without action worth nothing. Right? Then let's take a look, shall we? We know that Mitch McConnell, no matter how many times he would have come and defend himself of not being racist, but if you take his actions, don't take his word, his action, because telling me you're not racist is everybody's right to say whatever they want. But if you take his action, that time and time again, his action tell you that he is racist. Just recently. Now, if you look at the legislation that are passed, most Republicans in Washington, their legislation that they pass are very detrimental to blacks. So there is no if and buts about it, because if you are not racist, if you do not discriminate, then when a piece of legislation come to the floor, or even if someone were to propose a piece of legislation, now you are a Senate leader. You are a leader for a reason, which means they trust your judgment is better than the rest. That's what that means. Once you are a leader, it is assumed that you have better judgment than the rest. If not, then you should not be a leader. Somebody should already take that position. Because if you do not have better judgment than the rest, then the rest is actually proving that it's really bad. Now, I must say, in all fairness, for those who think or who are inclined to think that Donald Trump is responsible for that problem, he's not. Donald Trump is racist. We already know that. There is no if and but about that. We know he's proven it beyond reasonable doubt. And it is not because he is now president. He has been that way for as long as Donald Trump has been in existence. As far as back as when he was just 17 years old, he was exposed to his father teaching him how to discriminate. So there is no if and but about that. But the problem in the country, discrimination, racism, it's not the problem that Republican Party, most in the Republican Party, that problem of discrimination and racism is not Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump did not turn the Republican into what they are. No one should be blaming Donald Trump for that. I know it's easy to just point finger because of the way Donald Trump is. His outrageous statement, his insulting and his racist statement would drive some people to think that Donald Trump turned the Republican Party into what it is today. No, Donald Trump is not responsible for that. And it should not be put on Donald Trump. Of course, those elected officials would love to pin that on Donald Trump because it's easy for them to hide and let Donald Trump be the person that take responsibility for this problem, because Donald Trump has a big mouth. So why not just put the whole thing on him? But Donald Trump is only responsible of one problem. He's responsible of exposing the Republican leaders for who they really are. That's what Donald Trump is responsible for. Not for turning them into what they are, but for exposing them for who they really are. Now, I got a few backlash already treating that topic because, I shouldn't be talking about racism, discrimination, because, well, gee, those things, it's sacred. People shouldn't talk about it. Wait until a tragedy on the street, police execution of a black man, unarmed black man, and then we can talk about it for a couple of days and then put it back in the drawer because we don't talk about those things. I have one gentleman who threatened to report me, and I'm thinking, report me for what exactly? You see, that is the major problem in the country. That's what makes the solving of this problem so difficult, because just like we had during the Civil War, there is a large sector of the population, millions of whites, who did want to keep slavery around. And they died for it. Now, you would think almost, we're talking about, we're heading towards 200 years later. We still have millions of those individuals who want to keep things the way they want to keep things, like blacks being suppressed, being oppressed. Don't talk about police killing, don't talk about injustice, don't talk about any of that, because we don't want to hear about that. So it is always going to be difficult because, as I mentioned, the white nationalists, the KKK, not that their ideologies are good, but at least we can identify them and point fingers to them. And if need be, we may even be lucky and transform them from having hatred in their heart now to become loving individuals. As mentioned, that just happened. The documentary actually has to do with that exactly. An individual used to be member of the white nationalists and now turned into someone who is trying to reach to other white nationalists and tell them, we got it all wrong. Now that's easy. The big problem we have actually is being able to identify those who, under the radar, are doing things that undermine blacks, that suppress them, that oppress them, that prevent them from making any progress. Most legislations passed, presented, debated, offered by Republican legislators are detrimental to blacks. Now, just a few weeks ago, just to give you the point, when I said, if Mitch McConnell tells you he's not racist, he can tell you he's not racist, but he sure does things that prove just the opposite. So his words, his actions do not match his words. So I do not take people's words because you tell me you're not. I watch what you do. I watch how you behave. And then I make my own determination. Just a few weeks ago, Mitch McConnell pushed, well, not just Mitch McConnell, he's the Senate leader, whether the others were just following his lead, irrelevant, because to me, if someone has common sense and you see your leader going and throw himself over a cliff, now I don't know how stupid you have to be to do the same thing. Because if someone is doing something wrong, at the very least, there has to be someone in the Republican legislative body that says, gee, guys, that is not acceptable, especially in this day and age. Not a single individual. What does that say about a party that doesn't have a single individual that either cannot see what the leader proposes is wrong, but doesn't even have the courage to say, guys, this is the 21st century. We have to think differently. Now, what am I talking about? This guy, Thomas Farr, Mitch McConnell was pushing as hard as he could to get him on the bench as a federal judge. Now, why would that make Mitch McConnell a racist? Well, because that guy is. Not something that people don't know about. Mitch McConnell has the guy record. He is in North Carolina and he is on record suppressing black votes, fighting hard to make certain that blacks cannot vote. And this is the guy that Mitch McConnell wanted at all costs to put on the federal bench. Now, you can tell me all you want about Mitch McConnell not being a racist, but when you get the guy's record and you're looking at it, you the Senate majority leader in the midst of 21st century. And the person you want to put on the federal bench is a racist. Tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. And that's the individual you want to put on the federal bench. But you can come back and turn around and say, I'm no racist. The minute Mitch McConnell get the guy pedigree, Thomas Farr, the minute that he get that information in his hand, he should have gone to Trump and say, no, I'm not even gonna touch that guy. But what was even more troubling is the fact that all the Republicans voted for that guy, except for two. Now, those two, not because they had some sort of revelation, not because of what I just said earlier, because when I said that not a single individual has the decency to say to Mitch McConnell, you know what? I'm not going to vote for that guy because he is a racist. Not a single one. Now, there are two people who said they weren't going to vote for that guy, but for a very different reason. Jeff Flake, who said that unless there is a bill that passed the Senate to protect Robert Mueller, he's not going to vote for any nominee. So it wasn't just about that guy. Now, would Jeff Flake have voted for that guy? I guess I have no way of knowing that for sure, but I would err on the side of yes, because all the others did. Now, the second person who said he wasn't going to vote for that guy is that black senator from South Carolina. Now, which makes sense, is black. The guy that Mitch McConnell tried to put in the federal bench is a racist. It makes perfect sense. So those are the two reasons that guy is not on the federal bench today, to no fault of Mitch McConnell. So in the midst of the 21st century, You have a whole party that has no qualm whatsoever going full racist on anything. Yes, they can say whatever they want. They can say, well, we're not racist. Well, you cannot not be racist and want to put a racist as a federal judge. That doesn't make any logical sense. It doesn't pass common sense. And those are the kind of problem that permeates our society today and that translates into war on blacks. So every action that the Republican legislators, leaders, elected officials take is geared to wage a war on blacks. The title was not picked at random, was not for sensationalism. It was picked because it expresses the very predicament blacks are in the United States. War on blacks. There is a war being waged on blacks, and casualties are piling up by the day. Sean Hannity, we mentioned him earlier. Now, I don't know Sean Hannity. I never met the guy. I know he's a loony because I listened to him. It is sad that he has millions of people listening to the kind of rationale that he has, and no one seems to see that those things can only make sense in a Republican circle. They have no logic behind them, no common sense behind them, but he has an audience for it. That's fine. And I don't care. This is a capitalist society. You make money on the back of ignorance. Hey, nobody would tell you not to. But what I take issue in is the fact when I say he's a racist, he can say, no, I'm not a racist. But I know he's a racist because his action prove just that. Time and again, his words, his action prove just that. Remember when Trayvon Martin was executed by Zimmerman? Remember that? At Fox in particular, in general, if you tune into Fox, if a black individual is victimized, however that happened, you can rest assured at Fox that black deserve what he got. Because you find horse after horse, and they bring experts after expert who would tell you that, yes, that black guy deserve what he got. Because after all, he's black. Yes, there is a war on blacks in the United States of America. And the reason it's so difficult to win that war is because those who are waging the war are hiding. They are hiding to wage that war, like terrorists. You know, they throw a stone and then they go into hiding. Now, the white nationalists, as I mentioned, I personally don't have a beef with those people. I think having a way to identify yourself as having this ideology makes it easy. So I know you cannot be my friend because that's the way you feel. That's the way you see things. That's fine. But the millions of those who discriminate, who are racist, it's difficult to know those people because you could be talking to one, they laughing with you, and yet whatever they do is to prevent blacks from advancing, from progressing. They do whatever is necessary. Now, what's worse is the fact that this very behavior is also within our government. You have legislators passing legislations that are fully detrimental to blacks. That is a war on blacks. Now, for the individuals who can't wait to report me, I'm not sure. Well, at least I know one thing about that individual, that the side that is in, that is on the side of those who would have fought in the Civil War to keep slavery. We already know that. That is on that side. So, the most difficult part of talking about the war on blacks is because, as I mentioned, there are millions of whites who do not have that problem. They do not discriminate. They're not racist. They do not have any prejudice. They just see people for what they are, people. So it is difficult to just have a one-size-fits-all to discuss this topic. So it is difficult, I know that, but we will discuss the subtopic of that regularly, weekly, because we want to keep this in the forefront of the conversation so that we know exactly where those problems are coming from. Because the idea of not talking about, that's the biggest part of the problem. Because nobody wants to talk about it. You know, it's sensitive. You don't want to offend the black. You don't want to offend the white. You don't want not to get the job by saying that that guy is, or you don't want to get fired because you find out that that guy has all racist inclination. And that's the problem. Let's not talk about it because, hey, this is supposed to be sacred. Well, fortunately for you, here on the fourth branch, it is a topic that doesn't have an ending date for it. It's a topic of importance because the United States of America comprises various groups of people, and blacks happen to be one of those groups. In other words, you are stuck with this topic. We'll be right back. Join me here on the fourth branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join